And welcome everybody to another episode of MacYak. First off, before we even do anything, let's make sure we got
Sound
good
check.
audio.
Can you hear us?
Hey, hi.
Echo.
How you doing, y'all?
Yeah, can everybody hear everybody? I just want to make sure we get this out of the way before we go any further.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
So, guys in the chat, let us know if the audio.
Can hear everyone. Woo!
All right.
Hey,
It's
Yes.
our first
80 episodes and GT figured it out.
No, I figured out to test
Yay.
it before we even go any further. So, well, right now we're
Don't
all
worry,
going.
81
Who's the guy in the bottom
Right
right?
now, we're all
Oh,
going-
Dan.
We're all going through Bruce's stream. So basically, if Bruce logs out, we're toast on the audio.
Don't go anywhere.
I'm staying. Don't worry.
All right. So, and that's funny too because he's in Australia, so it's got to go all the way
Yeah,
around
I was about
the
to say,
world pretty
why,
much
why
twice.
did you choose the Australian?
Because he's the first one in the chat.
Yes.
I wasn't. I was like the fourth or something.
Oh.
No, actually, it's because he's the first one in the audio mixer, so I can't remove things around for some reason. It won't let me change things. I got to do some more research to figure out how to do that. So, anyways, guys, welcome. It's another episode of MacYak, number 80 or 80, as other people will call it.
8.0.
Yep, which means we're getting close to our 100th episode, which means we got to do something special for our 100th episode, I think. So,
Well, we need 1,000 subscribers is what we need.
yes, we
Yeah.
need that too.
That'll do it.
Let's see if we can get 1,000 subscribers before we hit our 100th video. Let's
I'll hold my breath.
make that happen. Yeah, you're gonna be holding it for a long time there.
Yeah. Hey, if we can make that happen, I say we add to the pot that's already available for the 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I had some guy on Discord PM me about that. Somebody, I guess Rocky or somebody had told them to ask me about what the laptop was giving away, and I said, go watch the episode. It's mentioned in there. So, like, he's asking me all kind of questions. I'm like, I'm not going to give away what you're supposed to do. You got to go and actually watch the episode. So,
And just so we can get this out of the way, which episode number is that again?
okay, you want me to say it?
69.
69,
Okay.
because Charlie's going to go.
6.9.
Woohoo! He's gonna go,
So for episode 86, we should dedicate an hour and a half to macOS 8.6.
Damn right.
We
That's not a
should.
bad
I
idea.
like that.
We
I like
should.
that. Yeah.
Right.
No, so does that mean that we should have,
We
this be
75?
dedicated to 8?
huh?
Yeah, maybe
Yes.
this should be dedicated to OS 8.
OS 8, yeah.
All right, I'll sit back and listen.
Hopefully.
So what are we gonna do with 9 then? We're gonna go OS 9,
macOS 9, yeah.
90. We could go 9.0, 9.1, 9.2.
Yeah. After that, 8 episodes of nothing, and then macOS 10.
Then 100 would be OS 10. So
Let's
Matt,
see.
Apple costume contest for episode 11.
Ooh.
100.
I'm going to be the Macintosh librarian.
yeah. Maybe we could do something like that. Maybe
Good
I'll
luck
have
with
at
that,
least
Jay.
something Apple on. Some kind of a Apple attire. Actually,
Shoot, I'm going to have to buy some. I don't own any.
I have-
Or-
I have a bunch of
Or
Apple shirts, they
let's
just don't
reverse this. Let's reverse this. Like she said, have an Apple costume contest, but have our viewers send us pictures on Discord of them wearing their stuff.
I like
yeah,
that
we
better.
could judge the best
us-
contest.
Oh, I like that.
Us
We could
as
do that.
MacYak, we vote on who the best one is, and they might actually get something.
Yeah.
I'm down with
Yeah,
that.
I like that. I'm up for that.
Sounds
And I'm
good to
sure
me.
we've all got some of those white stickers in the cupboard somewhere. We'll all stick
Yeah.
one of those on our
My
forehead.
phone is going
Yeah.
to the person
I've
that
got-
shows
and
up
you
wearing
guys-
Bruce,
those
I've
Apple
got
sneakers.
tons of those. I don't think I'll run out of those because I've got so many
I
bought so
was
many
gonna
Apple
say.
products there. Yeah.
And
And
people
you
give them to
guys-
me as well. They go, "Oh, you're into
Yeah.
apples, aren't you? Have some stickers." So,
You know what's
I'll add
funny?
them to the 100 that I've got.
I have one on my Jeep Cherokee. I have one on the back window, and I get people looking at, especially at work and stuff. They're like, "Oh, well, you're Apple." I'm like, "Of course."
Damn right.
I remember there was a story back when you had the rainbow Klingon ones. So someone in the early 2000s still had one on their car, and someone smashed into the window and stole the sticker.
What?
Just to
Oh
get
my
the
God.
Kling sticker. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So
That is
Yeah.
good.
I've had one of those, not on my own car. I forgot who I was with, but walking through a parking lot. There's a car with one of the colored Apple logo stickers on it. And the person I was with, I seriously don't remember who it was, like, oh, that's cool. Is that one of those equality stickers?
Yes, all
We need to talk.
68K Macs are equal, except the 6800 processor that was in the portable.
Yeah.
That goes in
Maciac
the
merge.
trash.
So,
Who
so,
knows?
so Kate said,
Someday.
"Oh, fun on that." So, is that mean she's going to have to be on our 100th episode too, right?
Wait, everybody that submits a picture is
No,
going to be on the
no.
show?
I said Kate has
Oh
to be
my.
on
Gonna
be
since
busy.
since she suggested it.
That's gonna be one hell of a Skype call.
Whew.
No.
Good thing it's
no.
not FaceTime. We'd be bouncing all around.
Oh, God. We'd all be throwing
And
up
your
right
wife
now.
wants to make T-shirts.
Josh, should
there.
we do that for the 100th? Maybe try to hit
No.
try to hit
No
the
FaceTime.
limit on that again.
We should.
You can do that on your channel.
Yeah, do it on your channel, man. We attempted that for how long? Almost a year, and we finally gave up and said it ain't gonna happen.
Grudy, you have
But
more
we've got enough
subscribers. Why don't you try it on yours?
subscribers
In
now.
fact,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I can't even remember the last time I group FaceTime. Be honest with you.
Hey,
I
at
can't
the
remember
rate,
the last time I
Oh, wow.
regular FaceTime.
At the rate that Bruce is going right now with subscribers, he'll surpass me before the end of the year.
Yeah. Bruce is, we're in the presence of a famous person here, man. He's,
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, it's all because of
The,
me. That's all.
I'm neck and neck with Steve at the moment.
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna turn that that flag off of my latest video and see if it goes down.
I
Oh,
think
it's-
there's
I mean,
a few scripted videos you need to get out there quick, Steve.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
I need to. It's a lot of it's coming from kind of one video, so I need to actually do a lot more like that. I think.
Well, that's like my channel, the Mac Attack. I've gotten almost 100, almost doubled my subscribers in the last month, and it's all from, like you just said, one video. I did that open core video,
Wow.
and I've had so many people watching now. And in fact, that one's actually surpassed views of my Pixelus mod video, because that was my most viewed video before then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's strange because you'll all of a sudden, even if the video is not new, all of a sudden you'll find new life, and then you're like, oh, let me capitalize on that. And then you spend time putting out a video on that subject, and then you don't get much.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah, ask him how he knows and ask me how I know.
I
Don't
think
chase,
that
it'll
Steve
drive you crazy.
needs to do a lot more rant videos.
Rant video. Yeah, well
Yeah.
Or
that was
answer
quite the
videos,
thing, yeah.
or what do you call it?
I forgot the official name.
correction.
Response video.
Response video.
Response.
That's it. Yeah.
There you go.
Basically, you're wrong, I'm right. Listen to me.
Everybody likes the angry Steve, except that when the angry Steve doesn't get the facts right, then he gets blasted in the YouTube comments.
But but most of your facts were correct. Yeah, I think you only had
Yes,
one.
I had a very good probability when I was just going off the top of my head. I had like literally a bullet point of notes, and I somehow made it.
And
but
you know what,
Let's get-
Steve? I
get
would
the
actually go more over the top of off the top of your head than I would with that one guy that did the original video. 'Cause
Yeah.
well, I think there was less in his head about iMac G3s than there is in my finger. So
I think Aaron is onto something here. Steve Rants is the best. You should start a separate channel.
yeah, back in
Rants.
rants.
I like it. I like
I'd
it.
watch it.
Now,
Yeah.
now, when that channel surpasses my regular subscribers, I must be doing something wrong. Or right.
yeah, I was gonna say it's right then. Yeah.
It'll just be my face is the icon, and then just a giant like text that says "Eep" over it, and that'll be the logo for the channel.
See, you've already got it planned out. Now just
All-
execute.
All
You're
up
good.
here. Yeah,
How's my audio now?
Sounds much
Much
better.
better.
sounds good.
I was
Fine.
just told my microphone was right there, not here. Thank you, Skype, Microsoft product.
Yes, I know. I had to do the same thing because my headphones were going to the actual speakers, and my microphone was going to the webcam mic.
Yeah.
So
Same with Discord. I plug something in. Every app has its own settings. I used to be able to just select an input in system preferences and everything used it. Not anymore. So I'm sorry. Now you're gonna hear me slurp my drink the whole show.
Yeah.
We'll slurp with you.
Hey, at
Some
least
ASMR slurping.
what do you got in that red Solo cup, man?
Slurp it.
You'll never know.
We will after the
Trina,
show.
my fancy mic is still
Capacitor
here.
juice.
Look, here it
Capacitor
is.
juice.
It just
So
doesn't
does
work.
that mean you haven't
Unfortunately-
restarted your computer yet?
I've restarted, but
Ah.
look, wait, since we're here, can you see the LEDs on there?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I'll unplug it. I'll plug it in. It'll come
Ooh.
to life briefly, and
It's
then
on.
it'll die. See, there it is. And like,
Yep.
oh, it's
Oh.
working, and gone.
You just got to drop it on the floor once or twice.
I tried that
Driver
many times.
problem, or-
It never went off.
Yeah, it did.
did.
Yeah, it did. You didn't
It
see it?
did?
The end.
So
the
I
blue light was
emailed,
still on.
but that's where the problems start. I emailed Blue, which is now bought out by Logitech, so you know that's going to
Oh.
be a 5-month wait for a reply.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So, but before we drift off too far,
Dude,
are
we're not
we
drifting off
officially-
anywheres.
Are we officially announcing the 100th episode costume party, whatever it
Well,
was?
does it coincide in October? Does it just like happen?
I don't know.
Let's look at the
I
week.
It's 20
don't
episodes from now,
think.
so that's
1,
19
now?
episodes.
well, yeah, sort of 19.
No.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
19 weeks from now. So, what is the 19th week from now?
Probably
Look
like
at-
the
look at
1st
Steve
of
counting, man.
January.
10, 15,
Yeah, I'm
5,
I'm counting on someone
6.
else to do it.
19 is October 22nd.
Really?
What does that
Really?
mean?
Hey, there we go.
That's
So maybe
Yeah, I
maybe
think
the
we got a
101
winner.
episode, or if we skip one, we'll be very close. We'll have a Halloweenish costume
well, we
party.
can still do Halloween on the
29th.
100th.
Oh, we could do it on the 29th. That's right before Halloween.
We've got people that disagree with us.
Oh,
October, it's
can't
not
count.
Halloween, is it?
So
this
yeah,
is where it comes in that I don't know how to add numbers
Kate's
together.
like November 26th. So everybody's like November 26th. So yeah, you were way off there, Steve.
Oops. I skipped a month. Oh well.
Yeah. Oh, so Matt goes, Siri gave him the answer.
Oh, well, I trust her math better than I trust my brain.
I actually get a completely different calculation to that, so never mind.
Ha! Well, you're looking at Australian ones. That's why.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Australian calendar is totally different than the U.S.
yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
Having said that, of course,
Mayan
that's
calendar they use. Is,
Well,
isn't
remember,
that's pretty
Bruce is-
close to some birthdays, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, my birthday's in October.
Mine's
Mine's
the
in
21st of
October.
November.
Mine's the 22nd, so there we go.
Oh, I
There
was
we
double
go.
counting.
Hey.
That's
Yours is the
October,
22nd of November, Bruce?
There we go.
Or October?
Sorry, 22 November for me.
Okay.
Oh.
And I'm 5
Sweet.
October.
I'm 14 October.
sorry, guys, all the cool people are born in May.
I'm fourth week of September.
See, all
Hey,
of us
see?
are around that area there, Jay.
Uh-huh.
So you're like the only one that's on the outside.
I'm the
there.
cool factor, I know.
No.
You're in the past, man.
So
No
we're
good.
not dressing up, right? It's
no,
it's our viewers.
the
Oh, we
viewers.
can.
The viewers have to dress up and submit
I'm
Pictures.
dressing up anyway.
now.
You know how hot it gets
Yeah.
in this office? I don't want to dress up.
Now, what we're gonna do is what we can do is we could show those pictures live.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
have it
like
as
that.
being. I have it as being. After checking, I have it as being the 3rd of December.
what?
So
Whoa.
I'm just saying,
What
Oh,
is the
boy.
3rd of December? 20 weeks from now?
something like that.
This is
I don't
this is
know.
Mac does math.
Viewers
live.
versus hosts. Well, if it's a little warm, Jay might wind up in a speedo. So
Yeah, I'm
Ooh,
going
You don't
in
want
a
to see that.
Borat.
You do not.
I'm gonna
Whoa,
get the
careful.
Borat swimsuit. Just go
How
all
do
out.
you know this, Greg? This is concerning.
Because Jay's wife told me she doesn't want to see that either. No, just kidding.
Oh boy.
Bruce is speaking. Yep. Bruce is in the future.
Yes.
Rainbow.
So basically,
Rainbow
tonight
Speedo.
is a free for all. If you have any topics
You have a guest.
you want to suggest in the chat that are not dogs with cones, then go for it. You know.
Well, one thing we were talking about before the show started, and Bruce brought this up, is about the arm stuff. I know we could talk all day long on that, but
Yeah.
and he brought up a good point here. He basically go ahead, Bruce, and tell him what we.
So, generally, the attitude that a lot of people have got today is that Apple is steering away from the norm. Apple is, okay, here's Intel, here's ARM. They've been with Intel, they're going to ARM, and they're saying, okay, they're moving themselves outside of the normal. Now, the thing we'll always have to keep in mind is the fact that Apple have been running their devices on ARM chips now, as in their phones and tablets for a very long time. So, and the Intel architecture the x86 architecture is pretty old these days. And there is an argument to be made to say that in actual fact, for a lot of today's users, if we're talking about people using Microsoft Office and we're talking about people browsing the web or checking their mail, using laptops, portable devices, trying to extend battery life, that sort of thing, there's an argument to be made to say that ARM is actually a better choice of chip for that, is in that it generates less heat, that it gets better battery life. And so the question comes about, when Apple start releasing these ARM laptops, if these things start actually performing really well, getting really good battery life, getting, generating less heat and having really good performance, will they actually start to influence other manufacturers to move in the ARM direction as well? So rather than us actually saying, okay, Apple is bucking the trend, we're saying Apple is setting the trend. So
That would be a first in a long time.
Well, they used to do that. They used to set the trends.
Yeah.
Okay, for instance,
Well,
I mean, when they first started out with the Mac, they set the trend for the, GUI, the graphical user interface. And then, of course, we all know the story that Microsoft stole it, but, Apple stole it
Well,
first.
Apple stole it first.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but, it's a thing, though, that Apple sees something that is going to work and they go for it. They go all in on something. Now, with what you're saying with the ARM, and I think you're right about this, is that the ARM is probably going to be very well with the Apple architecture, and Windows already tried. Remember, Microsoft already tried that, and it almost failed horribly with their ARM system. And in fact, they still make them, but they're just not the greatest in the world, and nobody ever buys them really. But
I don't know. Their current ARMs are really nice. They still, for enterprise market, I can get it from the VLC.
yeah, but I'm saying that right now it's not the best in the world. It's going to force, and like Bruce was saying, it's going to force people like Microsoft to up their game. And because if Apple does this right, and comes out with a good laptop that's going to last all day, maybe 2 days on a battery charge, I hate to say it, but I don't think anything could compete with that. And then have the processing power to back it up,
I think it's going to be
Apple-
good. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, Apple's in a position where they don't really care about their legacy clientele, where Microsoft is bending over backwards to support Windows 7 and older versions, and all these legacy applications that these businesses will not pay money to upgrade, so they have to have all this compatibility built in there. And that's just always been the way, whether you go back to Windows XP or Vista or whatever. That has always been the way things have gone with Microsoft. So Apple really doesn't care if you need 32-bit apps. They're not going to support it. They want you on the latest and greatest software, and they want you on the latest and greatest hardware. And that's just a matter of the fact. But I think it's very interesting because when Apple switched to PowerPC, they were in a very, very, very different financial and healthy, non-healthy situation that they're in now. So that was around 1993 when they were pushing for PowerPC and about to make the switch to that. And they were bleeding money. Their sales were okay, but they weren't making money and all this stuff. But now it's completely different. Apple is very healthy, very profitable. They're able and they're strong enough to set their own rules and just make you play by them if you want to be in their ecosystem. So I think they could pull this off. I think it would be interesting, to sort of get rid of the legacy baggage for the Windows platform and other platforms. But I don't know how fast other companies are going to adapt.
I mean, we always look at these things from power user perspectives because, a lot of us are like classic Mac Pro users. We want expandability and stuff like that. But if you imagine, I don't know, your average office worker that just walks into a store and says, I need a laptop. I need to be able to check my mail. I need to be able to browse the web. I need to be able to use my Office 365, whatever the case is. and I want the battery to last as long as possible. And they go in, and you've got an option here to buy an Apple where the battery's going to last you. As again, we're talking, theoretical stuff here. You got a battery that's going to last you. Apple, you've got. Oh, sorry, I've grown a tail. That's going to last you, 2 days on a single battery charge, and then you've got the sort of Microsoft alternative that's going to last you, I don't know, 6-8 hours or something like that. I mean, will this have a real impact on the computers that people decide, those sorts of people decide to buy?
Well,
what if it goes the other way?
Go ahead.
What if everybody's abandoning Intel? If you want a high-performance PC, you're already running a Threadripper, an AMD. If Apple is switching away from Intel, then PC in general, Windows maybe, I don't know, is going to switch away from Intel. Intel is going to feel this. So what if this pushes them to come up with the next big Intel chip? They're going to
competition's good. Let them do it.
Manufacturing, they're going to come up with the next best thing, and suddenly ARM is the garbage.
Look, that is definitely possible. I mean, this is true. I mean, obviously Intel could just start sinking all their money into R&D. But one of the arguments that was being made, and this is all reverting to a specific article that I read. One of the arguments being made is that there is a significant overhead with the x86 architecture, which is now old. And that for today, a lot of today's tasks, not saying all, but for a lot of today's tasks, the problem is the architecture, not necessarily the manufacturer of that architecture. It's again,
I would agree with that.
Well,
just theoretical.
It's so old that today's PCs still boot up. The beginning of the boot process is still 16-bit, and then it switches over to the more modern code and stuff.
64-bit.
So, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's all because of the backwards legacy compatibility and stuff, and it's really holding Intel back now.
Well, and one of the biggest reasons
the other
why
thing
it's
is-
what,
sorry, I'm gonna cut
I was
in
gonna say one of the
Is go ahead.
no, I was gonna say go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So one thing is people do bring up that compatibility and all that, but look, I have Microsoft Word on my phone, and it boots faster than it boots on my Mac or my Windows machine.
Yeah.
And I don't care how top of the line they are. So those apps are already there. They're already ARM compatible.
Well, I understand
There's
that.
not gonna be a
But
problem.
a lot of this push to keep the legacy stuff in is not Intel, it's business. Okay, because you have a lot of businesses that are invested in a lot of old hardware. Okay, and a lot of businesses they're the type of people that go like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, so they'll run hardware until they can't run it anymore. And like for instance,
That's why there's still PowerPC shops out there.
exactly, and if you look at it, I don't know if a lot of people
Apple
know
II
this or
shops.
not, but a lot of the point of sale systems out there, you know what they're run on?
XP.
No,
XP.
DOS?
no, OS2
Pen and paper?
Warp.
Yep.
Oh,
OS2
There's some of
Warp.
those, yeah.
A lot of ATMs still run OS2 Warp. Okay,
Yeah,
Hard to hack if no one's developing for it.
exactly.
exactly.
But there's a lot of stuff out there that's still using old technology. I mean, hell, I just read an article the other day that the Lenin Museum is still using an Apple II to control one of their displays.
Yeah, and there's like, you think of these institutions, they bought these multi-thousand or $1 million microscopes and medical imaging equipment, and then they have it plugged into an Apple II to make it move or whatever. And it's such a simple thing, but if you could go and get a stack of Apple IIs for $50 each, and when it eventually dies, and they're hard to kill, or you swap out the power supply, or whatever, you could run those forever without the cost involved in switching that over to new platforms. I mean, there's other things like that when Greg brought up that topic a while ago, that we were looking at that stuff, and just it's amazing to look into, because you think, oh my gosh, it's so old, and it's like, well, if it's not broken.
Exactly.
Yeah, but let's face it,
Well,
these sorts of people make terrible customers. because they're not buying anything new.
That's true too.
Unless
So
you're-
these
unless
these
you're the
companies are
repairman.
not really
But,
going to care
okay,
about
but
these
Here's the
people.
thing, though, and this is the reason why I say this is because when that stuff does break and they do buy newer stuff, they want it to be backwards compatible
Backwards
to work
compatible.
with
Mm.
their older stuff that it
Well,
works with. You know.
Yeah, and they don't actually. They're great customers because they pay service plans. They don't pay for hardware as much, but they pay a lot in service plan installments.
Through the
I mean,
nose
like the
of service
hospital,
plans.
you know.
Mm.
Well, I mean, like I used to work for a hospital many years ago, and around what was it, 2015, 2014, they finally moved off of an AS400 system to a Windows server-based modern version of the same software, and they spent a lot of money moving it, but it was still the same company, and they were still paying the same service contract, irregardless of which hardware it was running on. And it was just a matter of, because if you upgrade, there are so many quirks and things that can come along with that upgrade, and making that move is much more expensive and intensive than it sounds. It's like, oh, just upgrade it. Yeah, but every time you upgrade, you add bugs and problems, and I mean, no company makes efficient, great software anymore. It all comes with its quirks.
Yeah.
And how is this going to affect the? I mean, yes, we already lost Unreal Tournament in Catalina. Get it back. The transition to ARM is not going to help that, but I also think it's going to be a good thing for a lot of current software. As we all know, Adobe is complete garbage. That's 20-year-old code that they just keep revising to put new stuff in it, and it's trash. They will be forced to rewrite this stuff from the ground up and to make some really critical changes to make it run on an ARM chip, which I think they have an Illustrator for iPad or a Photoshop for iPad,
think
so they
Mhm.
they
It's
may
a
already
Photoshop, I
do
think.
that.
Yeah.
But for products like Adobe, this could be a really good thing. You may finally get the performance back that you had with CS4.
Yeah.
You mean
Yeah.
Well,
they can't keep sloppy coding?
well, here's the thing.
Oh,
though,
they can.
you-
They will.
Jay, you're gonna have to have them actually get off their lazy butts and actually do some new coding. I mean, that's the problem, is that they've gotten so lazy because people still buy the stuff, and they don't want to update it any further. I mean, they'll add little things to keep people coming back
Yeah.
for it.
But
It's
that's
all
actually
subscription
the
model now.
problem. Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that they just take this existing thing and then they just keep adding bits to it.
Yep.
Rather than having that kind of ground up redo. Haven't seen anything particularly exciting with Photoshop or Illustrator in a really long time.
It's usually like one thing. It's like, oh, the magnetic lasso is now slightly different. It's like, oh, good. What else? That's about it. Ah, crap. Oh, by the way, we broke these two things that you like to use, and we changed these keyboard commands that you can't change back. Thank you for the subscription fee.
I think the last big sort of significant addition to Photoshop, and someone can correct me here if they disagree, but would have been probably content aware scaling.
Yeah.
And they didn't even come up with that. Someone else did, and then they bought the company and added it to Photoshop. That was
It's
probably
like
the last
layers,
big.
heel brush. I'm thinking of like a few big things around like 6 and 7. They used to have
layers.
great stuff.
Moving to layers was a huge step. That was one of the big things. Moving to non-destructive layers was another big step in terms of the upgrades. But yeah, I mean, because I remember at the time when Photoshop was in its early days, and I used to know people that did retouching on retouching systems. And they used to say at the time, look, Photoshop's still not there. What we can do on these retouching systems, we can't do on Photoshop. There are things that, it just doesn't do. But all of those people now, they've abandoned the systems and are now using Photoshop. So Photoshop caught up, and it ended up doing, sort of being able to do the same things that those systems
That's the
did.
reason why I use GIMP. It's free, and it's pretty much caught up to all of those other ones right now too.
And a lot of professionals were hesitant at first, but the few that I know have mostly all switched to Affinity. They are growing so fast in features, in performance, and they said, listen, it's paying out the butt to Adobe for something that kind of works sometimes, and then next week there's an update with a learning curve. Like, where's my fill bucket? Oh, I have to click these 3 dots and scroll down a list to get. No, we might as well. If there's going to be a learning curve, we might as well switch to a brand new product that is doing it right and just stick with them.
And let's face it, for
Oh.
most people, they're just using the rubber stamp tool to make themselves look thinner in photos.
I do.
Yeah, if you don't need compatibility with what your clients or your vendors are using or whatever, then you could go off and do whatever the heck you want. It makes it a lot easier. But when, I worked at a publishing company for 9 years, and it was always that we had to keep our stuff at the latest and greatest or whatever to compare with our vendors or our clients, because we'd get all sorts of weird files and we'd have to worry about, oh, is this the right type? Are we using the right fonts? Do we have to update this? And there was always this room that had all these Sun System parts, because there was this one old program that had to parse these files that we got, and it was just like they were always eBaying parts to get this machine to go and work again. And it was just that's the life that some of these publishers live. Now I'm all for moving to newer stuff. I mean, especially if you're not stuck to that Adobe bandwagon, more power to you.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I have
I
so many
think-
clients that use it, I have to use it. People send me files in that format. I've got to have the compatibility with it. So
Yeah, you
even
can't
if I
take the
want to
chance
use
of you
something else.
working on something and it screws up.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that is
right.
the biggest stifling point on, competition, is the fact that, like, for instance, actually Microsoft kind of hindered themselves a little bit, I guess you could say, because they kind of gave up a little bit of their monopoly on it, is they opened up their formats with their X formats, but so you could get into their Office docs with other apps more easily, and it would still be formatted more correctly. It was more of an open standard. But Adobe is the worst offender of this, whether it be their PDFs, because you almost pretty much have to buy their stupid Acrobat Pro for an exorbitant fee, which is absurd for compatibility and ability to change their stupid documents, or in their Photoshop. Oh, it's locked down like Fort Knox, and it's not to the benefit of other, to any of the user base or the clientele that is there. This is another example of why companies don't move forward. They don't want to deal with, less compatibility and I have to pay out the rear end to another company. It's ridiculous, and I think that it's one of my most frustrating points. I just want more openness to it. So there's competition.
Speaking of all this transitioning and stuff, I read somewhere, I didn't read the entire article, but there's a lot of similarities in PowerPC architecture to the new ARM they're working on. And there's rumors that there'll be a way to do a super duper universal code.
Oh, you can actually do a triple binary. Yeah.
Which could go 3 ways. That would be really cool, because that could keep our Intel and PowerPC Macs still relevant.
If anyone wants to
Yeah,
develop.
that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a virtualization layer for that. That'd be kind of cool. I kind of like that
Would be.
idea.
It would be nice if someone figures out, like, okay, this is Rosetta 2. They obviously learned from the past, the first Rosetta.
Mm-hmm.
They can do it a lot better now. Here's the code, open source, and someone makes the original Rosetta just that much better.
Mhm.
Like, that would be
Oh,
awesome.
I'd love that. I agree. I think that should happen. I would love that.
But that's not going to happen. Come on now. Well, the only way that's going to
I
happen.
never thought we would take OS 9 this far,
But-
but thanks to macOS
But
9
here's
lives,
the thing: is how long do you think it's going to take before Apple releases the code for OS 10? Okay, yes, they're coming up to OS 11 now with big BS, but it's going to take a long time before they will make the
I
code
mean,
available.
they haven't released the code for 8 or 9.
Well, not the code, but they've
So-
released it to where people can actually use the software, no problems.
Yeah.
You could share the OS
there's-
9 and OS 8 and 7.
Oh. Well, I mean, they don't really freaking care about that these days either way.
Exactly, but
all their updates are free.
But here's the thing, though. Even BS is based on 10. I mean, there's very little changes. I mean, it's
Oh,
just
of
a lot
course.
of it's a
That's
lot
the
of
version number.
you know graphical
Kernel
changes.
changes and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
it's a lot of graphical changes. It's not a lot of physical or under the hood changes.
Well, and a lot of people think that there's a huge drastic change going from a kernel that supports, because honestly at the core of it, whether it be Windows 10 or Windows Big Sur, they're all still running on BSD, and it's a proprietary. So at the end of the day, it's all a kernel and then the OS layers on top of it. That's how it works. Now granted, there are some things they have to recompile, stuff like that. So at the end of so when you really think about it, I mean, the transition is not hard, unlike other platforms who shall not be named.
But I mean, it's that's what it gets me is that they're not gonna let people download that. I mean, they're gonna still have OS 10 locked down, to where it's only be used for Macs and stuff like that. But I think 11 is going to be harder for people to actually, especially once they go to ARM. We could talk about this a little bit too. Is Hackintoshes, or are they going to be a thing of the past? Once they finally switch over to ARM completely. I mean, granted, we got another they said 2 years at least of support for Intel, but what does that mean? Does that mean in 2 years Hackintosh is disappearing, or?
Well,
No,
here's
I think
a
you're
really
gonna see
important
iPad
question.
hacks.
What are Apple going to do for the power users? I mean, what are they going to release that's going to compete with a Threadripper for performance? That's the big question. Is it a CPU we haven't seen yet that's in development? Or are they going to get a whole stack of them and there's, loads and loads and loads and loads
There's
and
gonna
loads
be
and
like
loads
100
A12
processors.
chips or
How many can
something?
you shove in that
Well,
tower?
to be honest with you, and I agree with Bruce here, is like, because we got a little small sample during WWDC of what it looks like, and that was actually, they were running on the same processors that the new iPad Pro uses, which is the AX12. Okay, so it's not like they were using something that that they've already had. It's not that they're using the stuff that they're gonna be using, because to be honest with you, I don't think an iPad processor is going to be powerful enough to do like what Bruce says for us.
You saw the game.
I saw the game stutter under Rosetta 2.
Exactly.
So
they have something up there on stage that is worse in performance. I didn't even think it was possible. Worse in performance than a 1.2 gigahertz MacBook.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the reason
That's your
why
big intro.
The reason why they use that chip is because it's tried and true. They've used the A12 whatever moniker they have there for a while, so they knew how to program for it. And the next generation is probably still in development and all this stuff, and probably in development because they're trying to add bigger features to it or whatever. But Bruce's question is very interesting, because how many ARM chips are you going to put in a desktop? I mean, yeah, the Mac Mini has one, but if you have a Mac Pro, like, these things are so small. And I mean, what's the limit of how many it realistically makes sense to put in there? I mean, I'd love one with like a crap ton of, just put a bucket of chips in there, see what happens. Sorry, Rocky, go on.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry. I did mean to try to cut in there, but the reality is, though, if you look at NVIDIA and what they did with pulling their GPU processors into something that became a ARM CPU, you literally can look at, okay, so NVIDIA, if they really wanted to pull their muscle, they've got CPUs that have 500 cores essentially and thousands of threads. So, AMD as well has that. If that example holds true, then there is nothing to say that Apple couldn't take that same logic that NVIDIA's used, AMD's used, and create a 512 core CPU with 1,000 threads that is ARM. Now, granted, it's going to take some robust cooling, because obviously the video cards are any example, and it has limitations on what it can be clocked to, because obviously video cards only are able to clock to like 2,000 megahertz currently, because it's, there's limitations when you start throwing that many cores on the CPU right now.
Right.
But I think that's why we were seeing a lot of processors that were keeping at sort of the same gigahertz or clock speed, but they were adding more cores and they were becoming more efficient. Because you think of it, yeah, there are these extreme CPUs you could buy, and they're 3 gigahertz, they're 4 gigahertz, 4.5 gigahertz, or whatever. But you think of it since about 2006, when the first iMac came out, just as an example, it doesn't have to be a Mac, but that those processors were 1.7 or whatever and 2 gigahertz. And today we still see a lot of machines that are 2 gigahertz or under. I mean, look at the MacBook Airs they were doing. The clock speed is of course an indicator of how quick a task can be performed. But if you have a 1.7 gigahertz processor and it has like 8 cores or 4 cores or whatever, and then you have a 3 gigahertz 1 core, it depends on what you're doing, I guess, that you could potentially squeak out a little bit cleaner or faster.
But you got to
I guess,
remember
depending on the software.
that clock speed is basically, I think that chip makers, especially in the x86 architecture, have hit the proverbial ceiling. Okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because I haven't seen anything over 5 gigahertz. I think some overclockers have got it up to 5 gigahertz and stuff like that. But the problem is that the faster the higher you get the clock rate up, the hotter that chip gets. And that's the problem right now, is that you can't dissipate that much heat by going that much speeder. That's the reason why they do, like you just said, they do more threads. Now, the biggest problem with having more cores is the software has to be written in order to utilize those cores efficiently. If you have software that's only running single core, it's not going to be effective. So you're basically stuck at whatever speed that single core can do. And I think that's the biggest problem right now is that we have physically got to a point in the x86 architecture that they can't go any faster clock speed wise, but they're, like Steve said, they're expanding core wise, and
we hit that ceiling in 2012. Our Mac Pros were the last ones where an increase in core count also meant an increase in gigahertz. After that, it's like, okay, you want more gigahertz, you get less cores. You want more cores, you get less gigahertz. It's been a trade-off ever since late 2012, and that's only going to get worse. You want a 100-core CPU? All right, here it is, 500 megahertz.
Mm-hmm.
The cores don't matter that much if they keep getting slower the more you add.
Yeah, and I think if the operating system is fine-tuned enough to do some of that handling when the application can't, and wasn't that a big selling point with the G5 and what did they call it, Grand Central Station or Dispatch or whatever that technology was in I think it was Leopard or whatever, or maybe it was Snow Leopard, where they were basically saying that even if the app was 32-bit or maybe if the process was 64-bit, it would help to spread it across the independent processors or the different independent cores or whatever. I don't know if that, I mean, obviously that's an underlying technology in OS 10. It's probably still working behind the scenes. I just don't know how efficiently that works or how that actually works, because if you have, I guess, a 32-bit app that is 32 bits, I don't know how you're going to really spread that across. I don't even know if it's possible, but it'd be interesting to think about that. Of course, everything's 64-bit these days, so whatever. I'm living in the past.
And what about security?
So, I mean, that's another thing. Sorry to cut in before we go into that. That is something that actually Intel was a leader on up until AMD put out their Ryzen and stuff like that. Part of the Core 2 architecture and going forward into the iCore series after the first generation, going into like the second, third generation later, that is something Intel did. They had their CPU start doing that, spreading the tasks and doing a lot of that sharing and co-sharing. So that's not uncommon, but I think you're right. And if they could do that, I mean, how many apps are probably written for a single core and are transposed to some, multi-core just by whatever handling is done in the OS on any, mobile device, whether it be Android or iOS. Well, they're all running processors.
The problem with that is if the software was written for single core, the OS is not going to help it use more cores. It's going to use that single core.
So I looked up this Grand Central Dispatch, and it says it's an implementation of task parallelism based on the thread pool pattern. The fundamental idea is to move the management of the thread pool out of the hands of the developer and closer to the operating system. So it could help with that. I don't know necessarily how much that's going to help your app that is not really implemented for that. But if everything's 64-bit these days, theoretically, it should be a little easier. I'm assuming.
What do you know?
I like that idea.
Wait, my YouTube just vanished.
Nope, it's still there. I think we.
No, I mean my whole browser just poof, gone.
Oops.
Yeah, I think we all saw that comment at the same time. We're all trying to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So guys, we're actually. I guess we're starting to get more popular. So we're starting to get more
Trolls.
trolls.
Oh, don't give them attention.
No.
That's what they want.
Right.
But
What I was gonna say, the security aspect of moving away from x86 design or 68, whatever. Obviously, and this started a few years ago with the whole Meltdown exploit that exploited what was it called? Speculation. I forgot the terms, but that has been plaguing Intel and some AMD and even some ARM chips ever since. That's just a design flaw that they discovered and that they've been exploiting ever since, because you can't undo it. It's the way it's built.
it's hardware. You can't
Yeah.
fix it with
So,
software.
switching away from that, if you're going to design a new silicon from scratch, just getting in front of that will mean not for us so much, but for government contracts, big businesses. If you can offer a chip that doesn't have a vulnerability built in, that you know it's there, maybe it's not being exploited yet, but you know it will at some point, I think that's going to give Apple a big heads up in the maybe the corporate world, but I think government contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Big bump.
And if they're controlling the chip, they're the one supplier, let's say, of, well, I know they make and adopt ARM chips. I don't know if this Apple Silicon is 100% right from their factory and nobody else has the same chip, but the assumption is, I guess, if they are developing the chip in such a way that they have a lot more say, I guess, of maybe how it could be, maybe there's a firmware update or something. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they were thinking of those things now because of all that flack that happened with Intel and those vulnerabilities, because that's a very real problem. you get this chip out there that maybe can't be updated and it's on all this stuff. But I guess since Apple's controlling the OS too, that's one way to curtail that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this in the chat a little bit about the Hackintosh stuff. Once they go to ARM, and somebody mentioned if Intel or let's say Microsoft develops an ARM computer, the biggest, and Jay and I think Jay hit the nail on the head right there, is that Apple is going to probably lock the OS to the T2 chip or T3 or whatever they're calling it in the future. And it's not going to be able to be run on anything but a true Mac.
Right.
Yeah, just look at what they're doing
Yeah.
with the current Apple hardware.
Mhm.
You can't even replace an airport card. A Wi-Fi chip is serialized and tied to the T2 chip.
Mhm.
Why? Not even God knows. But they're locking down
Hardware
the hardware
profits.
so far that if they're locking it down that much in their own hardware with their own OS, then I can't imagine what the life of a Hackintosh is going to be like. Good
It's
luck.
gonna be fun.
Well, it's
Yeah.
going to be non-existent. I'm gonna go on a limb and say that pretty much you could kiss Hackintosh goodbye after BS.
I think somebody will always find a way. It's not going to be easy. I think someone's always going to find a way, but it's going to be more difficult because you have this entire new architecture that from the Intel stuff, people started doing stuff that they knew on Windows and all this stuff to sort of get around things, and with the Unix base and everything. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. I don't think we're going to see it right away, though.
Yeah, but you got to remember though, before we didn't have the T2 chip or the T whatever they're coming out with, the security chip.
I understand that.
That is going to be the biggest, I guess, plague for Hackintoshers is that they're going to have to try to figure out how to mimic that T2 chip.
Well,
I'd
but
be
that
very
depends
interested in what
upon
they do.
how rooted it is in the OS.
Oh,
Honestly,
I'm pretty sure
and what they
Apple's going
actually
to
have
root
to
it
mess
pretty
with.
hard in there. They're pushing the
Nah, I don't
T2
think
like you wouldn't
so.
believe. Why would they be doing that then?
Yeah, but I mean, just like their phones, people are still rooting their phones. So if they're capable of rooting their phones, there's nothing to say they aren't going to find a way around this T2 chip. I mean, it's still at its core just a BSD operating
Yeah,
system.
but here's
Wanna
the
find a
thing
way
though. Right
around.
now, is there a T2 chip in an iPhone?
The iPhone is a T2 chip.
No.
I mean,
I'm just saying, is there a
have you
T2
tried
chip in?
replacing your screen lately?
Is there one in an iPad? No, there's not one in an iPad yet.
Have you tried
Yeah, but
replacing
what,
the
what
screen
is
on
it?
it?
What is a T2 chip besides an ARM chip with a bunch of stuff in there to prevent you from doing things?
It's
Just a
It's
robot.
just a security
It's
chip.
a security
Yeah.
chip that basically everything runs. It's basically like the control center for the whole computer. Everything has to run through it and be verified before it will actually do anything. So
Well, I think John Rebel
Yeah.
in the chat's got the answer. We've got to abandon Apple, we've got to abandon Windows, and just move to Linux.
Yeah, I'll go back to pen and paper before that.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like researching all the different ways I don't know how to use a command line when I'm asking for help. That's so.
Yeah.
Hey, don't you use command line when you have problems on your Mac?
But wait,
You missed
do
the
they
joke
have
I
a
know.
T2
I-
chip in- thinking about that because it was mentioned. Do they have a T2 chip actually in the new Mac Minis with
Yes.
the ARM chip?
Yes.
Yes.
I would assume
So it's a
but yeah.
separate
So-
independent
Uh-huh.
chip. So would that then equate to the security coprocessor that's in the phones and iPads? They
Well, I
just
don't think
call it
anyone's
T2.
been able to open it up. Well, if they have, they haven't shared photos of it.
Well, you got to remember in the
Haven't seen-
phone, it's a secure enclave. It's
Yeah.
basically that holds your fingerprint info or your
Yep.
biometric info, which is a little bit different.
Okay.
Now, the T2 chip is actually doing the same thing. Like, for instance, it's in the MacBooks the MacBook
Yeah.
Pros that have the fingerprint sensor. And the T2 chip is kind of doing that same thing. It's kind of the secure enclave to hold your biometric data. So, it's kind of doing the same thing as the secure enclave is doing in the iPhone.
It would be
So
a little
maybe
silly
that-
to have a separate chip for that.
Yeah.
Once you switch over to ARM, why have a separate chip that's a second ARM?
But maybe that is a secure
They
enclave,
might-
and because the old ones couldn't run ARM CPUs, they had to put that in there.
Yeah, and Jay could be onto something there. I mean, they could build this into their new Apple Silicon, so it'd be all on one chip because they're calling it a SoC, so system on a chip. So,
Mm.
But why didn't they do that with the phones then? If they haven't done that with the phones, they still
the
have
phones
two
actually,
CPUs.
I think they have kind of done that now. I know, like the Apple
Yeah, but they
Watch.
still have secure enclave.
I know, like the Apple Watch has everything in one chip inside the Apple Watch.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think they're kind of moving to that where everything is going to be on one piece of silicon, and everything's going to have to go through that one piece of silicon. And that's why I think making Macintoshes, Hackintoshes, is going to be a thing of the past once you get past BS. Because
So how many years until we're gonna announce the Intel challenge? When is it
There
gonna
you
be
go.
so old? They're like, oh, let's do a
I
throwback.
think that's
Let's
going to
do the
be.
Intel
I
challenge.
I think that's going to be at least 10 years down the road.
Yeah, I would say
At least.
At
10 or
least.
10 or
And
more,
even
yeah.
then, we're probably still going to be using our Mac Pros.
Oh, I have enough spare parts to keep this thing going forever.
Yeah. So, but I think we've pretty much run this one in the ground. We talked for this one about an
Hey,
hour.
wait, you can't
we
beat
can go
down
another
a
hour.
topic
Yeah.
episode. What?
No, I'm just asking. I was going to ask the audience if there's anything out there that they want us to talk about.
yeah, that's a good idea.
We've got
Yeah,
what
I'd like-
35 minutes left. So,
Yeah, we got time.
Better hurry up. 35 minutes. That's all we got.
so dysfunctional. I will not be buying an ARM Mac back to Windows, and maybe Linux for me after Mojave is well and truly dead. Yeah, you might say that now. But when you see those new flashy MacBook Pros coming out with the ARM chips that last way longer than anything else out there, and they're
Yeah.
smoking fast and
If the
everything.
price is right, I'll buy anyone.
Yeah, you're gonna be like,
There's a lot of people that are so against this whole transition to ARM. They're like, oh, I'm leaving Apple. I'm never looking
they're
back.
not.
Personally, I have no problem if they want to switch to quantum whatever, as long as it works.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it. I know the transition is going to be messy. We're going to lose a lot of software that hasn't been updated in years, same as before. But I think if I ever buy a new Mac or a new used Mac 10 years down the line, it's probably going to be an ARM, and I'm probably going to love it.
Everyone has sort of assumed that this is Apple heading for disaster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people are assuming that Apple is now going to start releasing rubbishy products or something, or stuff that's not going to work or something along those lines. You know, Apple have thought of this. You know what I mean? Apple aren't going to make this transition unless they believe they can do it. And I think at the end of the day, that assumption that these new ARM Macs are going to somehow rather just be rubbish or toys or whatever the case may be, I just think it's unfounded. I think that these Macs, when they come out, they probably will be really good. I mean, they'll probably be plagued with Apple's normal problems, with, you know, hardware issues here and there, manufacturing faults. That's going to happen, you know, no matter what.
Yeah. They're
but
good
I
at
think,
that.
Yeah, that's right. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, if these things come out and they're fast and they work well and they do all the things we need them to do, other than obviously Unreal Tournament with stuff there, you know, I think, you know, we'll be buying them. I mean, when the transition to Intel happened, I didn't buy a very expensive one, but I was fairly quick to buy an Intel Mac. I bought an Intel iMac. You know, I wanted to try it out, see what. And I'll probably do the same. You know, when there's an ARM one available, I'll probably just buy a cheap one to try it out, a mini or something like that, see what it's like.
I know it's different for everyone, but my, for lack of better words, my loyalty to Apple is not the CPU they run. It's not the design of the hardware. It's the operating system. Once macOS goes to crap, I'm gone. I'm either going to stick with Snow Leopard or El-Cap or something.
So,
or,
Jay, are you leaving yet? Because you won't go to Catalina yet.
I'm perfectly fine on Mojave.
I'm perfectly fine on High Sierra.
I'll run that as long as I have to.
I'll go to Catalina as soon as Apple released a 64-bit version of Aperture.
There you go.
There you go. Me too.
So we did have a request actually for another topic, though, just to slip this one in there. Are we going to play Eep Quack?
We don't have any
Eeps.
We're gonna have to make it up on the fly.
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. And on the fly,
submit your Eep and Quack questions into the chat. Maybe we could do this.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll fill up a few of them. I'll take some notes, and in a few minutes, if we have some, we could do that.
Yeah. So Dysfunctional goes, I don't think they're gonna implode because of ARM Macs, because they keep jacking the prices up with ludicrous profit margins, and they want. Well, to be honest with you, here's the thing. The reason why Apple can charge what they charge is because people will buy it. That's
they're not going to be stupid.
Here's the thing.
People are willing to pay it.
Here's the other thing you have to remember. It's a really important thing. Let's look back in history of computer manufacturers. How many of them are still around? And Apple is now one of the biggest companies in the world, and that's come about because of these ludicrous profit margins. Now, I'm not saying I condone it, but this is a company that is around. It's going to be here to stay because of the way that they run that company. Now, you know, we can argue about what these future products are going to be like, and we don't like the fact that we can't, you know, upgrade them or whatever the case may be. We don't like the fact that Apple locks all this stuff down and forces you into buying new things. But, you know, what they have done is they've built a company that's going to last. So,
yeah, I mean, they've obviously done a lot of things right to make it as far as they have. I think they'll be around for a while. If I'm going to be using their newer stuff, it all depends on how much attention they pay to the operating system.
Now,
that's the only reason I'm here.
I got a question for all you guys, and you're probably going to agree with me. Do you agree that Apple would be dead today if Steve Jobs had not come back?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Dead
I
and
would
buried.
say.
Mhm.
We'd all be on
There-
Windows right now
there-
with
there
blue
is-
screens and yep.
Related to that video that I'm never gonna get myself dug out of. There was a very extremely different way of doing things that Gil Amelio was doing. And then when Apple bought Next and Jobs came back on as an advisor, it was very interesting, especially reading old newspapers. Jobs would say one thing and Amelio would say something else. And, Amelio was the CEO at the time. So when he was ousted out, especially the people who had deals, verbal contracts under Amelio, like the clone manufacturers, like, oh yeah, you'll get OS 8, you'll be fine. As soon as Steve Jobs stepped back in, it was night and day difference. I don't think they really would have survived. They would have been bought out by IBM or Sun Microsystems, and that would have been the end of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think they would have been bought out by some bigger, well, not big company. I mean, Microsoft did own a lot of. Well, actually, they owned it after Steve Jobs came back because they dumped a lot of money in to keep it going. And the biggest reason why Microsoft did that, and a lot of people don't understand this, is because if Apple would have went under, Microsoft's antitrust lawsuit, they would have probably gotten found guilty. Because here's the thing, and a lot of people don't understand this, is that Microsoft needed the competition from Apple in order to say we are not a monopoly.
Yep.
Okay, that is the biggest reason why Microsoft threw a ton of money at Apple. And
$150 million is a drop in the bucket from losing a lawsuit like that.
Exactly. So, there's always reasons why these companies do things. I mean, a lot of, Apple diehards were pissed at that, Bill Gates.
Oh, yeah. You go watch that video, you see people in the crowd like...
Yeah. But here's the thing, though, is that it had to be done. First off, Apple had no money at the time, so they needed that cash inflow. Microsoft needed Apple at the time because they were about ready to, basically be split up. So they basically
it's amazing. It's amazing reading between 1993 and 1995 how close Apple was to being sold to IBM. If Spindler wasn't a jerk and kept asking for a few more dollars a share, IBM would have snagged the deal sometime in the mid 1990s. It's insane to think about that, but it almost happened.
Yeah. Now,
it's a really interesting thing when you look at someone like Jobs is the fact that when he did come back, people listened to him. People did what he said. I mean, he came in and started, affecting change. He wasn't getting sort of backlash. People were going, this is the creator, this is the founder. We've got to listen to him. And he was making suggestions that were kind of bucking the trend, which turned out well for them in the end.
And I think,
but anyone else would have had trouble selling those ideas to shareholders.
Yeah. I think Jobs learned his lesson when he got ousted. I think he basically used that as a learning adventure, because when he came back, he knew how to run things, because he had no idea back in the day. He had no idea about how to run a company. Okay, he knew how to sell the stuff. He knew how to make people work harder. He could do that. He could make people do things that they shouldn't have been doing, but they could do. He would make them do things. But the problem is that when he came back, he learned all that stuff, and he knew what he could do, what buttons he could push, and and get into.
He learned a little bit of humility as well.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, I think also he was.
That's an accurate statement.
Yeah, I mean he was stupid critical of Apple because it was no longer his company, and he was probably super bitter of them, launching him out of there. But I think that it also made him think completely differently from the individuals who were in Apple's board, because when he returned, before he was even the CEO, 90% of Apple's senior board members were ousted, and Apple started fresh, because a big problem was probably a lot of them just thinking, we'll stay the course, we'll be okay. And unfortunately, that's the kind of thinking that got them into that mess.
Exactly. Yeah. And then he comes out with the what was the first thing he came out with? Was the iMac, right?
Well, there was a lot of restructuring and cutting down of the products. You know, that famous 4-grid
Yeah.
thing that
That's
Jobs
right,
introduced is I think was critical, because when Jobs came back, the Newton was still in development. They were making printers. They were doing all this other hardware stuff that
And there
Apple
was so many
was,
Macs out there, you wouldn't know
Yeah,
what
they-
to buy.
Exactly.
Which is
I remember a
starting to
famous quote that even an Apple sales rep at like CompUSA or whatever didn't even know the difference between these models because there were just so many of them. And so one of the first things that happened was when he came back, they said, look, we're doing a lot of great things, but that's not a direction that we need to be going in. And these are some brilliant products, but we just don't have the bandwidth to do that. And he made the difficult decision to be like, yeah, it's really cool if you're going to do this product or whatever. That's not in our core strengths. Let's kill it before we lose another $300 million on research on it.
Yeah,
You know,
but
because Apple was just bleeding money.
But he
in
cut the
doing those
Newton
products.
because Scully was the one that
There,
that was a spite.
It's
Came back
sucky
as,
because he promised when he came back that it was profitable, and the Newton was just turning a profit. The 2.0 operating system was great.
Mhm.
The software was finding its footings. It was actually a profitable company. Jobs said, yeah, we're going to continue doing it. Before Jobs joined, Emilio signed that the Newton company was spinning off as their own company, Newton Incorporated. It was its own company. Press releases and everything went out. A few weeks later, nope, we're coming back. It's coming back to be part of Apple. And then of course they axed it. And it sucks because that would have, I mean, it was very early, obviously, so who knows how successful that would have been really in hindsight. But it was something that was actually profitable on its own, which is interesting to say.
Mhm.
But yeah, it didn't last long.
And dysfunctional goes, Apple's product line is confusing at this point. It kind of is getting that way again.
I think it's getting muddied.
It is
Yep.
it is getting a little
I
muddy.
mean,
Yeah.
I would
you
agree.
look at especially the iPad line. Okay, right now there is like I think 4 or 5 different iPads that are currently being made.
iPads. What about the watch?
The watch is another one. I mean, they're still selling the 3. They're still selling the 3s. They're not selling the 4s anymore, but they're selling the 5s.
Yeah.
So it's like
Well, you got two new ones, 2 old ones. So I think the iPad is confusing.
yes, the
That-
iPad
that's-
is the
Yes,
most
I agree on the
confusing
iPad.
because
The MacBook was more confusing because before they killed that weird one.
well, and the reason why I say that it's more confusing because you have the iPad Mini, you have the iPad 7th generation now they're calling it. It basically that's the old iPad Air.
Yeah, like the classic.
Yeah. You have the iPad Pro, and then you have the Pro. There's something else. They have two
Then
different.
you have the Pro one with the bigger
Yeah,
screen.
there's a 12 point something inch screen and a 10-inch screen.
I'm actually all fine for them having multiple iPads because maybe I don't want the Pro one with the 12-inch screen, but I want one with the 10-inch or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think they manage their inventory so well that I don't think it's a bad thing for them. I think it's probably actually a good thing for the customers to have that choice.
Yeah.
I think that where they got into trouble before was like the MacBook, then the MacBook Air, then the MacBook Pro, and I was like, wait, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Well, they finally got rid. I think they're getting rid of the MacBook itself. That one's I think
They did.
gone. So you have the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air.
Yeah.
So
A lighter business.
yeah.
Take your pick.
So to be honest with you, both are okay. I mean, the MacBook Air is like,
Yeah.
I would not recommend that to anybody ever. And the newer MacBooks are actually, MacBook Pros are pretty decent. Especially if you get the higher processor one. But with new ARM processors, those are probably going to go through the roof, pretty soon.
Well, their
Hopefully
their
those
product
don't
line is
throttle.
going to be even more muddied with this ARM stuff because you're going to have the new stuff. Then you're going to
and still have the Intel stuff.
I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to change the name of the products, but it would be interesting to see how they market them because I mean, a consumer is not going to care. They're going to get what they think is a MacBook.
Now,
But us, we're going to be like, oh, which processors?
yeah. Now, since we're talking about this, the one that I can't figure out why in the world they did it is the iMac Pro, because do you have the iMac?
We all know why.
Bad machine.
They needed a stopgap before the new Pro was out.
Exactly, but they're still making
But-
the iMac Pro, and
No. Hold on. Okay. Well, you want to start talking about the iMac Pro. I can tell you a use case scenario, and this is cost effective because I actually recommended this. So, hospital was looking at for their RAD department for their RAD team to look at a solution that had the right screen size and everything, whether it be a private RAD analyzer, whatever they are called. They have a special title. These people make buku bucks, but they analyze radiology images and stuff like that. These things are super high
Yeah,
res,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
and they pay exorbitant amounts of money for the computer to be able to look at whether they're 2D or 3D. They pay a lot of money for the specialized monitor, for the specialized hardware, all
Okay,
this
but
gobbledygook.
Rocky.
But guess what? Fun fact: they can run it on a iMac Pro, which costs literally 1/3 of the
Okay,
price.
but here's the thing
and it
though.
works on
The
that.
iMac has the same exact screen as the iMac Pro.
Doesn't have the supported video card or CPU,
But it has the
because
same
that is
screen.
that's the linchpin.
I understand
Yes,
that.
the screen is the same, but it's the linchpin for this software to work, which is why I recommended it to these people, and they tried it and it works. Is the CPU and the graphics card?
Yeah,
That's the
I think
software.
it's a great middle ground. If you don't have the money to shell out for a Pro, and you're not like us, you're not going to go and buy a 2012 Pro and deck it out. You're going to go buy something new. It's either the iMac or
Well, you're
the
still
iMac
paying about
Pro.
$5,000 for an iMac Pro.
Well, of
Which
course,
is a
but
lot
it's not
cheaper
the
than a $50,000 Mac Pro.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, there
but
you
you're
go. So it's
but
a stopgap.
here's the
We're
thing.
not the target audience.
I understand that. But it's still the thin piece of crap that the iMacs are, and you can't open them and you can't clean them. So
Nobody,
that
the
matters
person
to
buying
us.
it
Yeah.
doesn't care.
Yeah.
I understand
But
that doesn't matter to.
If a graphic designer
Do
wants
you?
to get a new Mac tomorrow, they are better off still with the iMac Pro than they are with a brand new Mac Pro. Simply because the iMac Pro has an i-series processor, which outperforms the Xeon in single-core performance every single time. And I think it still has a place. Have they touched it in the last 2 years?
I thought the iMac Pro had Xeons in them.
No,
It has
no.
Xeons.
Do they have
Yes.
It does.
The iMac
It's got
Pro
Xeons in
With
it.
the 5K? I think I'm confusing it with the 5K iMac.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
the 5K iMac
somebody
has the
can get
i
confused.
series.
Especially with eGPU being a factor now with Thunderbolt 2 or 3, whatever they have. But the iMac Pro, it is a powerful Mac, and I've been keeping an eye on the forums and the user groups and all that. There's barely any complaints about the hardware. They actually pulled it off without any known defects currently. So it's not a bad machine.
Yep.
Would I
Oh
buy it?
yeah, I'd love to have one. They seem real nice.
Have one, yes. Buy one, no.
No.
So I guess Kate came in
I didn't say Bob.
as Macintosh librarian now. I just saw. I was like, what? So she switched users on us.
Okay.
So we got a
She
little
did.
bit of time left for the Eep and Quack.
Yes.
We got
It's
two
somewhere-
of them,
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yep,
All
I
right, so-
got my questions
All right.
here.
So let's go ahead and start off. So Steve, since you got them.
All right. So the first question is: have you used a PowerPC Mac in the last year?
Eep.
Eep.
Have one right back here.
Eeps from all of us.
Mine's sitting right over there.
And anytime I play Unreal Tournament, guess what I go to? I go to my G5.
Same here.
I love
Oh,
my
heck you.
G5.
Oh yeah.
And that's the reason why I don't care if they're getting rid of 32-bit app support with the newer operators, just because I still have my G5 back here, and it will run 32 apps as long as I want.
All right.
There you
The
go.
next question.
Quack. Wait. Oh,
Whoa, somebody
we
got a quack?
Two quacks.
Whoa, whoa.
Oh,
Somebody,
Trina
somebody
doesn't
send
have
Trina
one.
a
Get him outta
PowerPC.
here.
John,
Send her a
ban him
PowerPC.
from the
right
chat.
away.
Oh. Brock said
Brock,
quack.
Trina can
Come
have
on.
one.
Brock.
That is
Really?
Yeah,
a
well.
shame. Just when you start to like people, you know.
I'm telling you. Wow.
Oh boy. All right. Next
Okay.
question is: have you ever returned a computer to a customer without fully repairing their computer? So maybe there was something that was a bit of a problem that you just couldn't get right, and you were just hoping they wouldn't notice.
Well,
That's
Oh,
a
I
tough one.
thought I
I'm
let
gonna
them
say
know.
whack.
I've been open about it, but I've definitely
Yeah,
not.
Yeah.
I let them know.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Like, I'm
haven't.
not going to be able to fix this.
I haven't
You're
repaired
like,
something for a customer per se, where I got paid for it, so I have to stay out of this one. So
Oh, one time sticks in my mind. There was this PC. The person, it was back in the XP days. This is about 2007 or so, and I had to manually go in and remove all this malware and viruses because the person obviously didn't have a backup of their system. I backed up the user directory, but they had all this software. They didn't have the keys for it, so they couldn't reinstall, and all this sob story. And so I did my best, but every other time you did something weird would happen, and then depending on those conditions, something else would happen, and then you'd get a blue screen. And it was driving me crazy. I switched the hardware. I tried repairing all this stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like, look, they're giving me $50 for this thing. That's all I was getting. And I gave it back to them, and I said, yeah, it should be okay. And I just prayed that they never got that issue and called me back, because I was like, I don't want to deal with this machine ever again.
I did one 2 days ago, MacBook Pro that had wine spilled on it.
ooh,
I spent a massive amount of time and components to fix that board up. And at the end of the day, it worked, but it was 2012. The battery indicator didn't work anymore. I'm like, listen, here's your Mac. Pay me. You got 99% functionality. The only thing you don't have is the battery indicator. And they were perfectly fine with that.
Yeah,
So,
that's a win.
so they didn't know if it was charging
Right.
or not. They had no green light, right?
Oh,
I
you
don't
can
think
look
she
at
cared.
It had fan
Look at
spin
Well, they
though,
had
right?
the light on the charger, just not the button
But it
on
had
the
fan
side.
spin.
It
I've
had
got
that.
tons of MacBooks with bad indicators on the side. It doesn't bother me.
yeah. But
I've got a
it's
few
not
spare
like
indicators if you want them.
Hey,
done work either in the retail or in my own personal business.
Rocky, your audio is super
Yeah,
low.
you're.
Really quiet on us.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Sorry,
what's he
can you hear me
saying?
now?
A little bit better, but
Not really.
Let me see if it fucked up my audio. Hold on.
All right
I
now,
mean,
there, man. This is a
Like
family. Yeah,
demonetized.
demonetized. There we go.
you
It's not like we're monetized yet.
before we
anyway.
even got
Yeah.
I got a little
All right.
frustrated. I couldn't help myself.
So-
I apologize.
so finish your point, Rocky. Then we'll move on to the third question.
Is that better? Okay.
A little
So
bit.
the point is, I have worked on many situations, whether it be where you've actually come back to the customer, like has been already expressed, and you've said, look, I fixed everything else, but this one is the linchpin, and I'm sorry, not fixing this. Or I've come back and said, guess what? It's going to cost XYZ to fix,
Mm.
you know what? And they went, nope. And
Yeah,
you
you-
go,
Cost
usually-
would
"Right."
definitely be a factor.
Usually what I say is, look, I got it this much, but if you want me to do this, it's going to cost, and I just name a stupid amount of money. And usually they're like, oh, okay, I can live with that. There was this one guy that came recently, and this is, I've stopped working on PCs because of this, but somebody had this IBM that, it was a ThinkPad laptop. It was an okay laptop, but for whatever reason, the clock battery died. I replaced the clock battery, and the machine was doing this weird thing where it wouldn't even power on. It would act like it's completely dead if that clock battery was plugged in. The second you unplug the clock battery, hey, it works, but it doesn't keep the time. So I'm like, you know what? it works. Just leave it plugged in. You'll be
Time
good.
to learn to compromise.
Exactly. Or get a new laptop. All right, third question here. Have you ever downgraded your operating system?
Eat
Eat.
many times.
Yep. Eat.
Very painful sometimes. They haven't made it easier.
I downgraded OS 9, 9.0. I downgraded to 8.6. I downgraded 10.5 Leopard back to 10.4 Tiger. I downgraded Lion back to Snow Leopard because that was a disaster. And I think I do a downgrade every 2 years or so.
Well, here's the thing though, is that once they go to ARM, is that going to be possible? Because I know, like for instance, with the iPhone
I
software,
think
iOS.
they did make a comment.
Well,
I think there was developer comment that they made that they would not be following that path.
oh really? Okay, cool.
I believe so. I forget where I read it. I was just relieved when I read it. But that's a bonus one. Have you ever downgraded your iOS device?
Beep.
Eat.
Eep.
Eep.
Whack.
Quack.
Haven't been able to. That was the problem.
Well,
I tried.
Back
really.
in the day, I did.
You got to do it under 2 weeks, though, else you're stuck.
exactly.
Yeah. do that.
See, a
Or
lot
if you-
of difference in the chat here.
Or back in the day, if you had jailbreak blobs,
Yeah.
you could do it. I had a lot of blobs back in the day.
Sounds like
Alright,
a
next-
personal issue.
I was trying to move past that, but Jay got it before me. All right, next question. Have you ever had to put your foot down over a price of a computer with a customer who kept on trying to offer you less and less, even though you agreed on a price earlier? That's a long one. So,
But it's a pretty quick stomp.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've done that before, and then they
Yeah.
come crawling back to the original price.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this is about if you're selling something.
Yep.
It's a lot easier for me because I don't sell anything. I repair their existing stuff. So it's like you don't pay me what we agreed on. You simply don't get your stuff back. So it's in your best interest just to stick to the agreement.
Yeah, I got into a bad situation with PC laptops back in 2007, 2008, where my brother's friends were breaking them left and right, and I would repair them, and they're like, "Oh, I just want the hard drive, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "All right, well, here." And I'd be like, "All right, you owe me this much for the machine." Yeah, I'll get it to you. And then I would keep the machine because they'd never come back for the damn thing, and they had the hard drive.
Yeah.
And then one of these kids came back like a year or two later, said, "Oh, do you have my laptop?" I'm like, "No, I sold the damn thing because you didn't pay me." It's like, you
Yeah.
wanted it, you should have came back a year ago.
Yeah, I've had that before because
Now-
I've sold stuff on Facebook Marketplace and stuff, and I have people sit there and says, "Well, I'll offer you this much." I'm like, "Do you not see the part where it says firm?"
Yeah, I mean, I've have recently been contacted by a few individuals to do recapping, and it's not a cheap thing because you have to have the capacitors. It takes a lot of time, and you have all the products and the materials that you use and all the resources and junk. And there was this guy being like, "Oh, well, so and so will do it cheaper. Will you match that?" I said, "No, but you're welcome
Yep.
to use that."
Yeah, go wherever you
Yeah,
like.
it's
Let me know how.
Exactly.
it's not like we're selling
Yeah.
stuff at Goldman prices, you know.
Yeah.
No, I
Well,
thought it was
yeah.
a reasonable price,
The-
but
There's something, I mean, I've been sort of running my own business for a while now, not necessarily successfully, but nonetheless. But one thing that I've learned very, very quickly is you've got to stay firm to a price. You've got to make sure you give value to the service that you provide.
Exactly.
Don't ever make the mistake of buckling to someone saying, "Oh, that's too expensive. I can get it for this price, or I can get it for that price." I mean, my response to anyone who says, "Oh, if I quote for a development project and I say it's going to be $3,000, and then someone says, 'Oh, someone's quoted me $1.5,' I'd say, you go with that. It's a great price."
yeah.
Yeah, and then they're
Um,
coming back to
you
you
know.
like, "Okay, I'm gonna do
Yeah,
it,"
yeah.
because
They
they're
usually
saying
come.
that, but they really can't get it for that price.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well,
worked at a
yeah.
company where we had I was the project manager for this, and basically we needed a piece of software replaced. We got a quote of $550,000. My boss balked at the offer and was like, "Ugh, no." We ended up going with the place that was like 120, and for the next 3 years we had to pay upgrades and maintenance and fixes because it never worked ever. It was always
Yep.
a pile of crap. And we probably blew past that $500,000 months and months ago as we were into this thing. We just should have gone with the professionals from the start.
It's easier to bargain about price when you are offering a service or a repair or something or when you're the seller. But when it comes to offering services, you got to know your own value. Someone is currently sending, it's in the mail right now, someone is sending me a 2008 MacBook Pro with where the keyboard connector was ripped off the board.
Yeah.
Saw that one. Yeah.
That is my time. That's my parts. That's use of my tools, ultrasonic cleaner, everything. The price, as low as I'll go, is $85. And this is going to be a decent amount of time rerunning 20 traces. I'm just doing it because I love a challenge. But
It looked like at least half of those pads were gone.
oh yeah, more.
Yeah.
And no one is, or not a lot of people are going to say $85. I could buy a new one on eBay for that price.
Well, then buy a new one on
So I
eBay.
could say, hey, this is not worth it for that product, but that's not up to me. My price is my price. If you want to pay it, that's fine.
Yeah.
If-
Exactly.
And-
And
Yeah. And
And
when
at the end of the
I-
day, sorry.
you know, sorry, go ahead. But when I would purchase things to resell them, and I would add value by refurbishing them, rebuilding them, doing a lot to make it like new, cleaning it up, everything else XYZ, and then I would sell it at a price that reflected the time and the value that I added to it. I upgraded it, I cleaned it, I made it like new. And people would try to lowball me, and I'd go, look, you know what? Crack it open. Show me. They would literally sit there and go, oh, well, I can buy this for $20, $30 less. And I'd go, you know what? I will crack mine open a year from now, and it will look like theirs. However, right now, this thing looks like new. So it's up to you. And I would tell them, go buy it then. Fine.
And look, I'm guilty of that too. If I see something I like, I'm always going to try and get it for a lower price because that's just who I am. And if it's a negotiation, obviously you don't win all those negotiations. You'll get shot down. If I know there's going to be a good value in something, even if it's more than I would like to pay, I understand that's where the value is there. So it's not exactly.
People confuse that a lot. Price or cost versus value. You're not paying me.
I agree.
Because it only takes an hour. You're paying me for all the hours, days, months, weeks that I put into getting to the point where I can do this in 1 hour, not for the 1 hour. And people confuse that a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Quality over quantity.
All right, guys.
And of course, the other thing is that the customers that in particular when we're talking about service, providing service, the customers that do complain about the prices are usually the customers you don't want anyway. They're probably going to be a real headache in the long run. Yeah.
That's a red flag. When I got into it with somebody a few months ago, and I was like, you know what? If this guy's going to be nickel and dime me over $5, and I don't want this guy as a customer. No thank you.
Yep.
You gotta stop talking smack about Madeline now, Bruce, because she's in the chat. Just saying.
Oh dear, no, I have to. I owe Madeline an apology because I fixed one of her computers and it's I didn't fully test it and it's coming back.
Which one?
It's a very old one.
Ooh, shame on Bruce.
Bruce.
He admitted
Watch
to
the
it. He manned
subscriptions
up. He's
go
all right.
down now.
Yeah, that was terrible.
I'll have to make a response video to Bruce's video now.
Oh.
I tested one thing,
Fix the
but I
So
didn't
that's
test
that's
another
going
one.
on Mac 84 Rants channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Because Steve has to do what Steve has to do to make sure that Bruce doesn't pass him in subs. It's on now.
Yeah.
I think it's actually going to happen by the end of today. So I'm just saying, just put it out there.
So I'm curious. The one we haven't really heard from is Grudy. I mean,
Well, I got out the computer repair business in high school.
Smart man.
I just had so many problems dealing with people because it just usually would get on my last nerve pretty quickly. I tried to work as being the cheapest guy providing the best service, which cost me a lot more than it made me.
Oh,
Yeah, and he
somebody-
left blood in every one of the people's computers too. So
Exactly.
Save money. You got to wipe the blood
In
off
fact,
yourself. Pass the blood savings on to you.
I basically needed a blood infusion at some points. So
You needed a tetanus
I
shot
don't really
weekly.
have stories because it's just I try to get out of it as quickly as I
and
could.
that's
I don't
the
know.
reason-
That one lady who was a neighbor and you kept working on her computer, man, there's a story there.
Which one was that?
Before you moved, actually. Your neighbor, you had to drive a little while. I don't think it was actually a
that
neighbor.
was my coworker. Yeah,
Yeah, that.
I was just doing that because she was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, boy.
Those are the ones that are
family,
always painful.
The Pope, the Queen,
They're
God
paying.
himself. I work for you, you pay. No
Yeah.
exceptions.
The price is the price is the price. Now it is different if you're doing one board repair versus, let's say, the guy sends you 5. I'd be maybe willing
I'll
to
give you a
say,
discount.
look, all right.
Well, yeah, because
You know,
Steve's gonna
I'll
make a
give you a bit
video
of
of it.
Yeah,
You know,
that,
I
not
have
even a big discount.
discounts. I give people a discount for 3 or more boards when they send me stuff for recount.
The only one that can bargain with me effectively is my wife. This doesn't work. I'll get to it.
I wonder
You
why
can
she
do it
could
now,
bargain
no
with you.
cookies. you know, it's
No.
No, there's nothing. But there's more than just cookies.
Go.
Right.
just cookies, but this is a family.
All right,
Yeah,
guys.
That's
so,
the only one that's not paying and can get away with stacking
all right,
tickets.
so
on
we're
top of
about
tickets.
to the end of the show tonight, guys. So we're gonna have to go ahead and call it wraps here. But I enjoyed talking with all. I mean, this was actually pretty fun tonight, guys. Being with no script, no topics.
Yeah.
It's a shame we had so much trouble finding out what to talk about.
I know. Yeah, and we
So many uncomfortable.
and it
silences.
lasted an hour and a half, no problem. So, but anyways,
We got
guys,
skills.
make sure you go like and subscribe this video. Okay, we only go on once a week, so you're only going to get that one alert a week. Make sure you go back and watch episode number 69. That is our MacBook giveaway. I am giving away a MacBook 2008 white polycarbonate MacBook. Rocky is giving away a $50 Steam card, and I forget what Grudy's giving away.
iPod.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, first generation iPod Mini.
Okay, first generation iPod Mini. So there you go. All three of those things will be going to some lucky winner, but you have to go to episode 69 in order to figure out how to actually get entered. It's not an easy task. It's not
100. Get more.
exactly. So there we go. So make sure you like and subscribe, and tell your friends about it too. Get them
Yeah,
involved.
what's up with the likes? I mean, we got 28 people watching, 12
Well,
likes. What is up with this?
And
Yeah,
3
it's just
down.
a shame.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure the guy we banned gave a thumbs down before he left. Can't win them all.
I think there was 2 we banned, wasn't it? So
2. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I think we banned.
You missed the
two.
second
I
one,
must
Jay.
have liked
Who
it.
Yeah.
knew?
We're
Stay
going up in
tuned on Discord. We're gonna keep you posted on who wins the race before the day runs out. Is Bruce gonna be on top with subscribers, or is it gonna be Steve? It's
There you
gonna be
go.
bloody.
What are you up to, Steve? Come on.
I was trying to find my exact subscriber count, but YouTube doesn't make it that easy. So
You have to go to your analytics page in YouTube.
yeah,
Studio.
I'm logged in as the wrong person. So
Ah,
what
Sounds
do you
like
got,
someone
Bruce?
making excuses. So.
All right, what do you
you
what do
should be
got?
logged in as Mac 84, right?
The browser window is on that monitor, which is unplugged.
Ah,
Oh wait, here we go. All right, Bruce, what's your number?
2198.
Ah, improve your experience. Download the latest browser. That's a different subscriber number than I'm used to.
yeah.
I'll
Brock,
tell
Brocky
you, as
just
an
said that.
independent, unbiased party, you are both at 219K.
All right, I'm
So
sorry. Bruce,
whoever
what were you
gets
at
to
again? I'll check on my
220
phone.
first is the winner.
What were you at again, Bruce?
2198.
I am
Ooh.
2197.
Oh!
Oh!
Beat him by
This is
one. You
gonna
can't
be
see
fun.
it. It's just a big white blob.
It's 2197.
Oh.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I'm at 7708. So,
And so
Ah,
now.
yeah.
Got you on my side, Scrooty.
Tobias might have just evened the scales there. We'll see when YouTube recalculates
Yeah.
its stuff in about.
And depending
2
on how
weeks.
much you guys offer me to stay, I will not unsubscribe.
Yeah, I might not unsubscribe too. So which one of you guys want to pay me to not unsubscribe?
Oh boy.
I'm 199 now, whoever that was. Thank you.
Oh!
Yeah, this will be good.
I'm removing your video from the end of mine. That's it. We'll see how this goes.
We'll keep you posted on Discord on
Yeah.
how this
We've
turns
got to
out.
come up with a viral video, don't we?
All right, guys.
Yes.
We'll see
There
you
you
guys
go.
later. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks for hanging out.
All right.
See you.
Hey, guys.